Great. Okay. So before we begin with introductions, I'd like to begin as we usually do, doing a land acknowledgement. So Rocky Mountain Zen respectfully acknowledges that we are located presently, well, in part, on Treaty 6 territory, a traditional gathering place for diverse indigenous peoples, including the Cree, the Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Sotsu, Anishinaabe, Inuit, and many others whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant community. And great. I would like to do a quick round, just acknowledging everybody for being here today. So I'd like to begin with Myoun Roshi, Reverend James Ford. Welcome. Is it Seiru Sensei, Jan? Am I pronouncing that right?
Not a sensei.
Okay.
Seikyu is
Seiru?
yeah, although I go by Jan.
Okay, Jan, wonderful. Yokoyama Sensei, Kyoke, wonderful, welcome. Kathy, welcome. Trudy, welcome. Koda-san, welcome. Sean, welcome. Jenna, welcome. Marla, welcome. And I'm sorry, I've forgotten your girlfriend's name, Marla.
Joe.
Joe, welcome. Wonderful. Thank you very much for everybody being here today, and we'll get right to things here. I don't have much in the way of announcements today, other than, as you may have seen, we've wrapped up Club Zen at Nika Yuko for the season, for those of you that are in Lethbridge. So we'll be coming at you primarily via Zoom from now on. We're in the fourth wave of the pandemic here in Alberta, and so I think we're exercising a bit of prudence and not getting together necessarily in enclosed spaces right now. So hopefully we will be able to do that in the near future. Right. So I would like to, without further ado, welcome. I got a little bio for our speaker this evening, Reverend James Ishmael Ford. Myoun, is it Myoun Roshi? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Myoun.
Myoun Roshi. Okay. And he was ordained a Soto Zen priest in 1969 and trained in temples in San Francisco and Oakland. Then at Shasta Abbey at Mount Shasta, California. He received Dharma transmission from Reverend Kennett in 1971. Later, he spent many years studying with the Koan teacher, Dr. John Tarrant, and in 2005 received Inca from him. He prefers to is a member of both the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, North America, and the American Zen Teachers Association. And he served on the membership committee of the AZTA for a decade and a term as a member of the board of the SCBA. Roshi is also an ordained Unitarian Universalist minister, and he served as parish minister for 25 years and is minister emeritus of the First Unitarian Church of Providence. Currently serves as consulting minister with the First Unitarian Church of Los Angeles. Roshi maintains a blog at Monkey Mind and is the author of several books on Zen. Hopefully I got all of that right. I read it off the bio of Empty Moon Zen, so I'm just going off of that. So welcome. Thank you very much for being here this evening and offering the talk. So the floor is yours, Roshi.
Thank you, Ryugen. And thank you all for having me here, and Jan, and I'm such a big fan of Yokoyama Roshi that anything that he's involved in is something I'm really glad to have some connection to. I was asked this evening to talk a little bit about the precepts, my understanding is that there is some interest in the community. Some people perhaps are even contemplating embracing the precept way. And I would like to encourage that. So what I would like to do, if people are comfortable, is talk a little bit broadly about the precepts and their place within Zen Buddhism, and hopefully have some space for a conversation. Perhaps Gyoke-san or I can answer, or Jan can answer questions for you if you have them. I think it's interesting for us to look at Buddhism as it comes to North America. It's part of an ongoing evolution, and I so desperately seem to want to talk about the history and origins of Zen Buddhism these days, and I will try to contain myself and keep to the actual subject at hand. But there are contexts, and Buddhism itself, as it presents, particularly in the Mahayana, the great vehicle that the Zen schools are part of, but Buddhism writ large, kind of sits upon a foundation, a tripod, not unlike some other spiritual traditions. For us, the three legs of the tripod of Buddhism is a particular way of insight into the way things are, the world. We call it prajna, wisdom, and a set of disciplines that are, meditation practices specifically, and the third thing is kind of a moral path, a container that we call the Precepts way, and so for anybody interested in Zen, usually we come in through one of the other two gates that we've been called into practice. We've been really interested in what Zazen might be, Zen meditation. Perhaps we've heard of koans, or there are any number of aspects to just the discipline of meditation. And Zen, of course, the word Zen is the Japanese mispronunciation of the Chinese mispronunciation of the Sanskrit term jhana, which literally means concentration, but is understood as meditation. We are a school of Buddhism that's specifically focused on meditation. So we often get that. Others, we've read Alan Watts or people like that, and we're intrigued by the teachings, the insights of Buddhism, particularly perhaps the two truths or the four seals, which I'll try very hard not to digress too far into here, because the precepts themselves are worthy of a full exploration, because they really are. To be healthy, the meditation needs wisdom. Wisdom needs the container of practice, the container of morality, to use a term that as a child of the 60s I find a little interesting, tripping off my tongue, but something very, very, very deeply important, fully as important as meditation, fully as important as wisdom. One could say you can't really manifest one without the other, and so it's this virtuous cycle of relationship. The way we approach precepts has a historical context, and this is, of course, the dangerous thing for me, because I do like that, is that it really starts with the Buddha. The guy, Gautama Siddhartha, somewhere between the 3rd and 5th centuries before the Common Era, nestled up in the foothills between India and what now and Tibet. Nepal specifically, and he gathered a number of companions, and in that gathering of the companions, a monastic rule began to form, as such things probably normally happen. When something bad happens, all of a sudden a rule has to be thought up. And because at first it was just a boys' club, they had to have a lot of rules, and did also, and then eventually they had nuns, and because it turns out most cultures are misogynist, they didn't need them, but they added on extra rules just for the women. But in the heart of it, at the heart of it, there was some profound insight, and Gautama Siddhartha saw it, and eventually as householders, people who were really taken with the teachings, we're not going to become monastics, we're not renunciants, still saw the need for that container, and they asked the Buddha for a rule of their own. And he proposed five precepts, and those 5 precepts are actually the first 5 precepts of the monastic rule. So everybody in the Buddhist community, in all traditions, found these 5 precepts as foundational for people: not killing, not lying, not stealing, not misusing our sexuality, not becoming intoxicated. I'll dig into that a little bit as we go forward. Things happen. People grew old, they died, life went on, issues arose. Buddhism is a missionary religion. It has a good news. It didn't use armies, but generally it was either wandering monks or merchants, interestingly, passing into other cultures. The most significant, in my view, passage was the passage into China. And in China, things really were, a lot of apple carts got upset. And forever, I would say that Indian Buddhism came to China, it shacked up with Taoism, and their love child was Zen. Great phrase in my mind. It's not technically true. Zen is very much Buddhism, but it is Buddhism with Chinese characteristics. And what happened is that as Buddhism came into China, there was it came in with merchants and some monks and nuns and a boatload of books. The great wealth of Buddhist writings, and there's a lot of them, arrived, and they tried to figure out what is all this stuff, and they came up with a scheme that kind of squared the circle of all the schools of Buddhism and all the different writings, because they kind of assumed they were all the teachings of the Buddha. And so they cooked up a scheme, and the idea was that, well, after the Buddha had his great awakening, he preached the Avatamsaka Sutra, which is this humongous text. In English, it's 3 big fat volumes, and it's the most cosmic of the teachings, and it centers on the profound realities of interdependence, and yeah, it's really worthy. And they said, and clearly nobody got it. So then the Buddha decided to start from scratch, and all the Theravadan texts are then ordered in there, then the Mahayana text, and then finally it comes to the culmination with the Lotus Sutra, which was the last thing the Buddha taught in this Chinese formula of trying to put this together. I love the Lotus Sutra. Actually, one of the coolest things about it is that it starts by telling us how wonderful the Lotus Sutra is and how sublime and immaculate the teachings are. And then it says, oh, by the way, and then it tells you a story. And then it comes back and says, did I mention how wonderful the Lotus Sutra is? That it's really spectacular. And by the way, that reminds me of a story. And it just circles around. There's a million stories. Many of them are really, really good. It never quite actually gets to what the Lotus Sutra is. It opens us into the mystery, all kind of wonderful. One of the other things that happened in China is that they decided somewhere there was a what looks to be a Chinese forgery. They used the title of a traditional book called the Brahmajala Sutra. And but there's a Pali Brahmajala Sutra. There's no connection, but the Chinese text says, if you're following the Bodhisattva path, this way of liberation, whether you're a lay person or a monastic, it doesn't matter, and it's all about awakening. And it enumerated 48 vows that you could take that were available to monastics and householders together, and lots of people took it. Buddhism comes, then Chinese Buddhism expands into Vietnam, Korea, and Japan, and for our purposes, we'll just focus in on Japan. And there, all sorts of things were going on. There had been an establishment of Buddhist monasticism, and in the evolution of Buddhism, they decided you should have a special dedicated space to have ordinations, and it required imperial licenses and things. And there was one, and as new schools began to emerge, the people who sat on the franchise of the one would let a couple of people get ordained a year, and this really was annoying. And in the 9th century, there's a Tendai monk named Seicho, and he petitions the emperor and to have a new ordination model where they don't use that platform. Instead, they use the Bodhisattva precepts to do the same thing as the Vinaya ordinations, but just with the 48 vows. And Seicho dies, but then the emperor decides to do it. It ends up becoming the normative way people are ordained. So I'm ordained by an abbreviation of that. Gyoke Sensei is ordained by in that same model. And what happened was that in Japanese Buddhism, and specifically Zen, our school, but everybody else does almost the identical thing. We all take the same precepts. We count 16, and we take them as householders. We take them as novice priests. We take them with transmission, both as priests and as teachers. And I think there's something really, really good about this, that we're all united in the same precepts. And it's an innovation in Japan, but which means it's only 1,000 years old. And it really has become dynamic and rather beautiful. So we have a little time. Can I, before I jump into that, is it possible to pause, and if anybody has a question or a concern wanting to have some clarification or wants to correct anything, I'm really happy to do that. And then I'll jump into the reflection on the 16 precepts themselves. Ryugen, can you moderate that?
certainly.
May I ask
Oh.
a question? Just yourself personally, what did you feel was the spiritual difference before and after you did the precepts?
Well, for me personally, they all had different significances. The precept when I took the first time that I took the precepts, with I'd been practicing Zen for 3 years, 4 years, something like that, and it seemed time. It seemed, I'd been practicing. I still had no clue about insight, wisdom, but I was beginning to practice. I had a regular practice, and it seemed I needed to make a commitment. It seemed this would be a promise to myself in front of friends and companions and the whole universe. So it was a deeply personal, intimate moment where I felt I was joined in with the community. A couple of years later, when I ordained as a monastic, in the Japanese style, which did not have a celibacy vow, but might as well have for in the moment, for the rigidity of the structures. There was a different quality to it. It was setting an intention that involved a stepping away from the life that I believed I had into a new life that I didn't really understand, but felt it was really important thing for me to do. Years later, when in full ordination, which is a little different than the Dharma transmission, that actually, it was that part, the full ordination, what's sometimes called Denkai. It really felt like it was simply the culmination of my formation as a priest, and my and it came with an obligation or of service. Dinbo transmission was actually a more intimate thing, and the precepts are are there, but they're more latent in it, and it was more about that insight, about that opening of the heart and the wisdom. But for me, framed in the specifics of life, and because of that, the precepts became were important. And as I've gone forward, and I've had so many friends who who've had moral failings. They often, it seemed to me, it had to do with them, kind of like forgetting about the precepts, falling too heavily into one thing or another, and forgetting the balance of the life. Was that at all helpful?
Yes. I wanted to know like a personal experience and how it. So thank you for that share. Thank you. That answered my question.
Yay.
Not sure if anybody else, if you just want to raise your hand, I mean, you can do that too, I guess, or just say hi.
Otherwise, I got
Okay.
things to say.
I think we're good.
Okay, great. So the way it all comes together in the 16 precepts that we have received in Japanese Zen, and which I should say that there is a growing halfway precept ceremony that we find in Western Zen communities that I think is really important. People who want to put their toes in, but are still reflect on is they just do the 5 precepts, and that's kind of cool. But generally we do 16, and the 16 start with the refuges. If you go back to Buddhist formations, you become a Buddhist by taking 3 refuges. It's similar, I guess, in intent to something like the Muslim declaration. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. If you say that with the intent of converting, you're a Muslim. In Buddhism writ large, if you say, I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha, you're a Buddhist. It's an open-ended kind of Buddha. Buddhism is a little, so like in Islam, you do that. That's kind of it. Buddhism's always been looser about that, and in Asia, there's a lot of multiplicity. I understand there was an attempt at one point to mark out the number of adherents of religions in. Geez, I'm trying. I think it was Japan. Yoke-san can correct this if I'm wrong, but the number of adherents came out to something like 300% of the population, because people, yeah, I'm a Buddhist. Shinto, you bet. And down the line, and it's part of East Asian culture. It's a little bit less one true way, but it's still important. I mean, it's still I take refuge in the Buddha. That's generally understood first as the Buddha of history. Gautama Siddhartha as our primary teacher, as somebody who opened a way for us. But it also means Buddha also means the Dharmakaya, the great openness itself, the boundlessness of the universe. It also means history and boundlessness, and it also opens us up into a dream world, the mysterious places that happen when we let go of our certainties. So I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. Dharma is one of those words that has a multiple meanings, and in English we capitalize the D for this Dharma, and we're talking about the teachings, the presentation of the wisdom way by the Buddha and his followers. And we like the Chinese version. If it rings true, it's the sacred text of the Buddha. It's the words of the Buddha. Even the one that is straight ahead, putatively an autobiography of a medieval Chinese monk. Words of the Buddha, sacred texts, the Dharma, and the Sangha is the community. Way back at the beginning, it was probably understood a little bit more narrowly as the monks and the nuns, but pretty quickly, and certainly in the great vehicle, the Mahayana, our Dharma family, we understand it's the companionship of practice. From some angles, it's everything that is. But there's that there is also that intentionality part of it. So I take refuge in the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dharma, I take refuge in the Sangha. The first 3 of the 16 precepts. Any questions about those? And this is not a speak now or forever hold your peace thing. So we can come back. The next set are called the pure precepts, and I had to dig around. I was trying to figure out where the heck of these things come from, and let's see. I have notes in front of me. It comes from the original version appears to come from the Dhammapada, which is a collection of the sayings of the Buddha, a very early text. A lot of it almost certainly is actually what the human being Gautama Siddhartha had to say. And let me find the verse. I seem to have in my notes here. I really wanted to tell you all about wisdom first, and maybe we'll come back to that. A lot of work for a small text. Verse 183 in one translation: renounce all evil, practice all good, keep your mind pure. Thus all the Buddhas taught. Now, that's the earliest form. Then it becomes gradually in Mahayana and in the Zen schools to cease from evil, to practice good, and then variously to save all beings is the most common version. And you can sort of see what how this kind of works. If you can't do anything else, try not to do evil. And if you think it's evil, it's probably what you shouldn't be doing. And if you can, there's a step beyond that. Get proactive, practice good. And there's a lot of self-direction in this. There is always a touchstone of the ancestors. They've said a lot of things, and it's probably wise to take that to heart. But the call is yours. How can you be good? What does that mean for your own heart? It could be as simple as kind of like not being a jerk. Well, oh no, that's the first one, right? So the second one is like kind of be a mensch, try and do some good in this world. Maybe it's just helping people a little bit. Maybe it's trying to do legislation and social change. Your particular unique karmic consequence situation is got to take the lead in that. And then save the many beings. I said Zen Buddhism is a missionary religion. It's not about preaching, or it's preaching in the sense of I believe it's attributed to Francis of Assisi. Preach incessantly. If necessary, use words. And there's our save the many beings, but we save the many beings by seeing who we are, number one, and maybe reaching out a hand. Has nothing to do with helping people find the right doctrine. They need to do that themselves. And in the grand play of Buddhism, eventually we will. So that's the 3 pure precepts. Comment, question, anything about the pures? And you can skip back if you want to the earlier ones. Then
I think Sean
Hi.
raised his hand.
Just really quick. I was actually more a comment. This is actually one of the things that drew me to Zen in the first place, was that the idea of proselyting was something that wasn't really known. Just the idea of when you're ready, you're here. I invited someone to our Soto Zen group for meditation, and I think exact words I said were, "You're welcome to come, and if you don't want to come, that's okay too." That. So that's just a wonderful thing. That's really it. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, the hardest part I've noticed is with family. You got to let people, we get, especially at the front end, we get all excited about this because there seems to be something really good, and we can annoy our friends and our family about this. Yeah, which is, what's that? There's a Facebook meme that floats around every once in a while, circles in. The first part is, when I became a Buddhist, my family and friends were all worried, but then I became Buddha and everything's okay. And the way I take that is, we open our hearts, we open our minds. We're not so concerned about people thinking the right way. But it's totally cool to invite somebody to do Zazen, especially if you think that it might be useful for them. But then the decision's theirs, and there's no, you don't get a crown in heaven for it, and they don't avoid a lake of fire. It's a different deal here. But still worthy, still very wonderful. I mean, my life. Then we return to, was there anybody else? Then we return to then we get to the 10 precepts, and they break out into two sets of 5. And the first 5 are basically the five precepts of that are universal. And I'm gonna just actually use my notes here. So the first one is, do not kill. And then there's, in our ceremonial life, we say, cultivate and encourage life. There's a negative connotation phrasing and a positive phrasing. Part of what I kind of like about this one is that it's a conundrum, because if you look in the Hebrew scriptures about killing, which informs Judaism and Christianity and Islam as well, the Abrahamic traditions, when they talk about killing, it's actually the Hebrew, the translation of the killing in this text, in their precepts, in their commandments, is it means literally pierce, but what it means is do not murder, no unlawful killing of people. So there are pacifist currents in Judaism, and especially in Christianity and even in Islam, but they're minority voices. The normative thing is that there are circumstances where killing is more than permissible, and for good and ill has followed out of that. Buddhism, interestingly, for a religion that is pretty situational ethics oriented, where causes and conditions call us to specific decisions in specific moments, and are not really strong on universals. This is fairly adamant. It's do not kill. Which instantly is impossible, because you can't breathe without killing things. You certainly can't eat without killing things, even if it's a carrot. So there's kind of a thing. Now, in the Jain tradition, which is a religious movement that arises around the same time as Buddhism in the Indian subcontinent, they take this really seriously, and to the point that, and you maybe have seen pictures of Jains with wearing actually they've become quite popular here now, masks, and sweeping in front of them, and fairly exaggerated attention to something that is actually impossible, and to the point that even in their tradition, a highest good can be to starve oneself to death, in order to minimize the amount of hurt that you cause in the world. Buddhism rejects that view. For one thing, there's no absolute hierarchy of who's better than another. So, a germ might be just as good as you, but you're just as good as a germ. And there needs to be a meeting of this reality. So how do you not kill? How do you foster life in a world in which suffering and death and killing is inevitable? So it sets the stage for a humble life, a little bit of humility. We are invited to get over ourselves and to see ourselves within the larger context of things. The second precept is do not steal. Honor the gift not yet given. And this is an interesting one because it establishes in a universe that Buddhism understands as being in complete flux, that things are caused by multiple conditions arising. They exist only in a moment, and the conditions shift, and they move on. In the verb noun universe, there are no nouns. It's all verbs. And I'm sitting here and you're sitting there. You have maybe you have a coffee cup that you just really like. If somebody takes it, it causes suffering. And we're invited to see the reality that in the play of the universe, that there is an integrity to things, and people have, and things, who we are. We don't really end at our skins. There's a complicated, messy network of relationships, and respecting that is a critical precept, one of the foundational precepts of Buddhism. Do not misuse sexuality. And it's one of these ones with a complicated evolution. And what did people mean 2,500 years ago, and what do we mean now? And for us, it seems, as we examine it and we look at what do we really mean, is that we don't want to damage people with our sexuality and our sexual desires and the sexual urges. There is no, I see Jan is leaving us. I see, because it's 7 o'clock and or 8 o'clock, and so the respect of our bodies and the respect of other people's bodies, and the knowing how powerful sex and sexuality is, we embrace a path of moderation and respect. The fifth precept, and let me at least get to that one, is do not become intoxicated. Here you start seeing an interesting, just in the historical footnote sense, the precept in original Buddhism, the one that you find in 5 precept ceremonies and in monastic ordinations, is do not be. It's literally do not be drunk, and it's understood to mean do not get intoxicated. In the ceremonies that we do in Japanese Zen, it's one translation is do not sell the wine of delusion, and that's because we're actually using the Brahmajala precepts rather than the Vinaya precepts, and that was a little twist that they added in. It had to do with don't trade in intoxicants. And there it opens the interesting conundrums. A very dear friend of mine, serious Zen practitioner for many years, was for many years a wine salesman, and he had to, and it was just, what he found himself called into as a reflection on how he makes his living and what he's trying to do. And, he found his, and I think he left selling wine, not because he thought it was unethical, but he got called into another kind of work that led him to it. It's 2 minutes after the hour. The 5 are the really super duper ones. There are 5 more. They're kind of rich, and they're all worthy of reflection. And if you do the precepts in a ceremony, the run up to that entails a lot of of that reflection and contemplation. It happens there are only 5 books in the English language about the Zen precepts. You can read the entire body of literature available on the subject, and I would encourage you to think about that. If you're going to read only one, I think Mind of Clover by Robert Aitken is my personal favorite, but there are many good ones. How shall we wind this down a little bit?
If you have a second, I don't know if anybody has any questions for you, Roshi, or if anybody just wants to jump in.
Yeah, and I'm happy to stay here. I mean, the other people are taking care of our other Sangha. So,
mind if I say something? Myoun-san, Myoun-san. Yeah.
Please.
Myoun-san, thank you so much for doing this. And I actually, Jürgen and I were talking about next time we do something at Rocky Mountains and community, we're talking about precept ceremony. So this is directly relevant. And I just found out the first thing when Soto Zen community came to North America, they respected, honored ancestors like Jürgen-san did to the native First Nation. Then to welcome the new people becoming the Buddhist, they did a precept ceremony. I mean, I consider you as one of the hero generations because I inhaled the tradition and I died in the tradition and I got resuscitated by the Western Zen. So you witnessed the entire history as it started in the West. I just wanted to ask you how you think about this, us starting this community in Canada with this precept ceremony. It's just how
I'm so excited and I'm so pleased for you all to the degree that as this evolves, part of what's kind of intriguing about if you're, as I understand your Sangha is affiliated at least through Ryugen, maybe institutionally, therefore with Gyoke Sensei, you are linked not just to Zen writ large, not to Zen romantically, not even to the nascent Zen communities that are forming and beginning to take roots, but you're going straight to the source. You will be part of the actual Soto Zen sect of Japan. And there is a North American office. It's currently the only institutional bodies of Soto Zen. We use the word, I say I'm Soto Zen. I'm not part of that. I'm part of the American evolution of it, and I have the lineage connections, but not the formal connections. And there's something enormously, it's not necessary, but it is rich and wonderful. And so you're part of a pioneering thing because there hasn't been crossing the border into Canada for reasons I don't understand. The Pure Land schools have done it, but the Zen schools have not. And this is, as near as I can tell, the first formal Zen community, Soto Zen community affiliated with the Soto Shu in Canada. So wow, and how that actually physically happens is the group registers itself, but the other thing is people start taking the precepts within the frame of the Soto Shu, and what an amazing thing! What an absolutely amazing thing!
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Ford, I want to say thank you very much for further explaining the precepts to us as a new community, because I was curious about the precepts. I had seen Yugen go through the precepts, but I was like, what does this mean? Should there be an epiphany? Is this a practice?
Right.
What am I committing to exactly? And then you explained that I could do the 5. And, just after that, I was like, oh, that's good. I would like to start small and build. you know?
Well,
And spend more time in practice, but I am very interested to know. So thanks for sharing all the valuable information this evening.
You're welcome. I'm not sure if Gyoke-san will be doing the 5 precepts. It's a modern Western innovation, but not a bad thing.
Okay.
May be doing the 16, because part of the joy of this practice here in this specific community is that rootedness in the tradition. And so there will be innovations, because Reverend Yokoyama is an innovative person. He's open to adventure and exploration, but he's also part of a 1,000-year-old institution, and he bows to that with open eyes and a big heart. So yeah, good stuff.
Yes, I still have much to learn. Thank you to my teachers and to you, Mr. Forth.
Great. Was there anybody else? Oh, Kathy. Oh, you're muted, Kathy. Sorry.
You're still muted.
There we go. Can you hear me? I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I would be interested in taking the precepts.
Well, I'm so glad. I mean, it's nothing anybody has to do. You can practice forever without doing it. And for me and for many of us, there's a turning of the heart. There's it has to do with commitment. It has to do with expressing this practice more fully, realizing the wealth that it opens for us as human beings. So kind of delightful.
Thank you.
Great. Well, Roshi, I'm not seeing anybody else with their hands raised. So I guess I just want to say on behalf of our little community here, Rocky Mountain Zen, thank you very much for taking the time to offer the talk today. It's very much appreciated. So this will be on YouTube too, just in case anybody's looking to go back over it. It's on Rocky Mountain Zen's YouTube page. So yes, again, and thank you for Jan. I know she had to head out, but if you could thank her for joining us as well, that'd be appreciated. Yeah. So I guess that brings the evening to a close. I guess I don't really, like I said, I don't really have a lot of additional announcements. The announcement that I hate doing, but I'll do it anyway, because you got to get into the habit of it. If we don't have a lot of overhead, but if we do have a few things, Zoom licenses, and we also like to offer our teachers that come and give us talk a little bit of Dharma. If you want to buy Rocky Mountain Zen a cup of coffee, if you go to rockymountainzen.weebly.com, I believe is what it is. That is you'll find a piece there for the if you want to donate a little bit to Rocky Mountain Zen. Roshi, I don't know if you wanted to lead a closing dedication of merit for the class, or.
Oh, I misunderstood the request before. I
Oh.
think I have to throw the ball back to you.
Okay. Well, I guess as we close, I'll just may this merit extend universally to all, so that we, together with all beings, realize the Buddha way, all Buddhas, throughout space and time, all honored ones, bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, wisdom beyond wisdom, maha prajna paramita. Wonderful. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Roshi. Thank you, Gyoke, and look forward to Sunday is Club Zen on Zoom. So, and there is one announcement. I made a little bit of announcement. Starting October, I think it's October 1st, whatever the first Saturday in October. I know there was a request to start Saturday sitting, so we will we'll come up with something for that too. So I'll send announcements out. But again, thanks very much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you again, San.
Thank you. Okay, son. Thank you all.
Everybody.
Thank you, Myoun-san.